Welcome, everyone, to Inside North Attleborough Schools. My name is Susan Cullen. I'm the Superintendent of Schools, and this is part one of a two-part series that's going to be focusing on technology. As you all know, this is a new little program that we have to enhance understanding across the town on what's happening in our schools. So today, I'm going to be asking some questions of our technology director, Miss Lynn Weigel, and the next time we meet, we're going to still focus on technology, and I'll be bringing in some students to find out their perspectives. So let's just move on to our conversation with our technology director, Miss Lynn Weigel. Hello, Lynn.
Hello.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So since you've arrived July 2010, there's been a lot of different changes that have taken place here in the district that focused on technology. Why don't you begin with sharing with everybody what it was that you noticed when you got here? What kinds of things did you see that were needs?
Well, beginning here in July of 2010, my first task was to really get to know the district and understand the culture that's here and the technology that was in place at the time. And walking around, I realized we had a lot of work to do as a district to bring everyone forward to where they needed to be and get the right tools in the hands of our staff and students so they could do the job they needed to do every day in school. Walking around that first year, I discovered that we had about 400 desktop computers that were still from Windows 98. Consider how old that was. And so looking at that, realized, and hearing from the staff as well, realizing some of the frustration with that, as we began to put more and more expectation on our staff for the needs using computers and the internet. So the first year here was mostly that, getting to really understand what work needed to be done and working with my staff to lay out a plan to make that happen.
So when you talk about Windows 98, maybe folks at home might not realize that that had its major issues as far as some of the new technology that was coming out or some of the new programs. Can you elaborate a little bit about what that means if it's a Windows 98 system? What were the complications?
Right. The biggest concern for me at that point was that these were all on our network. And Windows 98 is no longer supported by Microsoft.
Oh.
And so because that is the case, they don't send updates to that operating system anymore. So we're vulnerable, more vulnerable to getting viruses. Much of the software that we should be using or want to use would not run appropriately or correctly on that kind of an operating system. Not to mention the system itself, the desktop computer itself, many of them were 10 to 12 years old. And if anyone is thinking about the computers they have in their homes, I'm sure most of you will replace your computer after about 6 or 7 years at the longest. That's usually in a business environment, you might only go 2 to 3 years. So typically in a school district across the state anyway, from my experience, we would last maybe 5 years with a desktop computer. So it was a bit of a concern because they were breaking down. A teacher would be depending on it to run some program for a student for an intervention or just extra work for them, and then they would find that the system wouldn't boot and wouldn't start up, and so they would become just give up on even trying to use technology in the classroom.
You know, I agree with you, Lynn. I remember back on the days when I would be walking around the schools, which I do all the time, and when I first got here, I was shocked to see many computers not being used at all. And what I found was the reason they weren't being used is they weren't able to turn on. So we knew that there was a very urgent need to do something about that. And as you remember, we had a huge budget issue. So having that happen simultaneously to trying to upgrade our computers was a big problem. Luckily, we were able to receive the capital improvement project funding from the town, which we are most supportive of, and we are always supportive of the support from the town. Can you talk a little bit about what that significant funding did and we were able to do here in the district to shift what it was that we saw from the beginning till now?
Okay, well, my first year here, there was a capital improvement plan approved,
Mhm.
luckily for me, coming in. So once I had a sense of what the needs were, I had to use those funds for what they were designated for before I came, that capital plan was written. So that plan gave us the ability to add a number of interactive boards and mounted projectors in many classrooms across the district. I also was able to use much of that funding to help another issue which we really haven't touched upon, which were the servers in the district. Most of the servers, and many of them were located in all the different school buildings, 9 of the buildings, and were old themselves and at a critical point. Now, these are servers that are storing critical information that's used daily. So I was able to update our server environment, and we created what's called a virtual server environment that's located at the NOC, which is at the North Attleborough Electric Company. A nice, secure, climate-controlled environment where servers belong, rather than in a closet or a makeshift location in each of the buildings. So we were able to do that the first year.
So you're talking about building a foundation?
Correct.
In order for then to really actually bring in some things that people might see, or shift and take some of those computers out of the classroom and put in some updated computers. It took us a couple of years to get there.
Yes.
How many did we replace overall? Do you know that number
For
offhand?
the servers?
For actually, I'm jumped from servers right to computers, but how many servers then did we replace?
Well, we replaced them. There were probably around 13 of them now that have been migrated over to the virtual environment, and I might not have that number exactly right. But so that piece was huge. The first year, I did not use the funding to replace many of the computers. If you recall, that first year when I arrived, we had a very large donation of donated computers from the Coast Guard.
That's right.
So my staff was spending much of their time deploying the Coast Guard computers. Very generous donation, but donations are problematic in themselves in that these are computers that were already well used. While they were better than what we had, and helped buy us a little bit of time, placing them bought us a short amount of time, but I knew that we really needed to do something in the next wave of funding to replace desktop computers, which is where we are today, and I will get to that.
Okay.
How we're doing that now.
So you're talking about a long-term solution and a sustainable type of opportunity versus trying to, a Band-Aid approach of bringing in some used donations, which we are very appreciative of, but the complications that can go along with that.
For all public schools, I think that finally realizing that technology is no longer an add-on or just something extra to do with students. It is a necessity. It is needed. Our entire student information system is on our servers, and then we post those out to the DESE 3 times a year. Actually, now we've gotten to where it's nightly. So more and more information is required to come from districts, and all of our staff and students really need to have working equipment in order to meet those needs. So the work that's being done is to do so, to update the infrastructure. Servers, which is in the background, not really seen. Beyond that, we've also been working to update our network to support the increased traffic that goes across our network and out through the internet. And as you know, much of what we do now is web-based, cloud-based, so we're working hard to make sure we can accommodate those needs as well. So a lot of work has been done there. And that was pretty much our first 2 years of my being here. We really spent a lot of time updating that infrastructure so that we can accommodate and move to the next piece.
So talking about the infrastructure, Lynn, can you elaborate a little bit more on the other things that need to be put in place that people might not see as far as a brand new computer, but behind the scenes kinds of connections that need to be in place in order to really build upon our new environments? For example, wireless.
Right. Well, I did mention already we've been updating the network. And in that, we've been updating switches and trying to get ourselves to a position where we can handle traffic quicker for staff so that they're not delayed and waiting for things to happen, because everything is web-based. Along with that, the trend now is to really move towards an environment where wireless is in place in every building. This year in our capital plan, we are finishing up the wireless access within the entire high school. This building here at Woodcock has had wireless in the entire building for a couple of years. We have also added wireless spots in each of our elementary schools as part of another greater project in making that available to our administrators. The plan going forward, and as funding becomes available, is to continue to build on that infrastructure of wireless, because we are, as a society, everyone knows, moving towards a time where we're actually there, but we need to catch up, where people have devices, smartphones, iPads, other types of tablets that they use as tools to help them stay connected and communicate and keep organized. And so I see us as a school district becoming more of a bring-your-own-device environment. And so that's where my vision is set towards accommodating that.
You know, I've often heard that wireless is considered the fourth utility, that, you know, it went from outdoor plumbing to indoor plumbing, that we need to look at wireless as in that same capacity as a necessity, as part of how it is that you do your electrical work, and that you need to have that in place to move forward. Do you agree with that?
I would definitely agree, and I wouldn't even stop at saying it's just the wireless. I would say technology as a whole, it really needs to be built into the regular budget the way you would any other utility. It's wonderful that we're able to do major projects with capital plans. However, each year you should have monies in your budget that you can depend upon in order to keep and sustain what you've put in place. You never want to get back to the position where 10 years from now your tech director is saying, well, now we have computers that we replaced 10 years ago and we need to do that all again. It's an awful lot of work, and it's a lot of frustration for people if you allow yourselves to get to that place. So my hope for North Attleborough is that we can sustain what we're doing right now. We're really making some great headway, and I'd like to see that sustained.
I agree, and you know, it's been so beneficial to get a large sum of money like that, about $500,000, to be able to really begin this, or bring it to a different level. The sustainability of that is key, critical as we move forward, to not get back to where we had to start from. I think that that's important. So let's talk a little bit about that. $500,000 in a capital project. You've spoken about how there were some things behind the scenes that you upgraded servers. We have some wireless. We have things like that. But there's also some classrooms that we call interactive classrooms. They have interactive whiteboards. Talk a little bit about what that is, and expanding the opportunities for not just a computer, but now on a whiteboard within a classroom. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Part of going to the cloud and having all of this internet access, I think everyone realizes how much information is available to us, and we really need to expand the ability for students within our four walls of a classroom to reach outside. And the way to do that is through the internet, and it kind of expands the classroom, if you will. So bringing in tools like interactive whiteboards or projectors into a classroom allows for teachers and students to have a way to do that in an environment that allows them to share it with everyone in the room. And I think teachers are very excited, even just with the with the projectors in their rooms. That is one step forward for them, because they really want to be able to access many of those tools. We provide the ability for them to stream video from a wonderful source, which is Discovery Education. Makes their job easier to do that and to share that with their students. One of the other things that we've done since I've been here is we've updated our website. And that happened officially. I started looking at it my first year. Last year, my second year, right around this time, I began the work behind the scenes to migrate us away from an older website to a new one. And this new website gives us and gives teachers and students the ability to collaborate more. Not only is it a basic website, providing all the same kind of information people could find on our previous website, but this provides teachers and students with tools to interact with each other, and we're building towards that. As part of that, using an interactive board, for example, teachers can capture notes that are taken on the board or images that have been used and save the information to a PDF file and post it to their class page. So, for example, if a student is absent and the notes were captured and posted to the teacher's website, the student knows that they can go in that night, log into their teacher's page, and see the information they may have missed by being out that day. So that's just one quick example.
Sure.
So the interactive tools that we've been putting into classrooms work along with a better access to the internet, a better website, which has the Web 2.0 tools that you hear a lot about, discussions, surveys, posting notes, posting information, posting homework. All those kinds of things are really made easier through that kind of a website. So
it's interesting because a couple of things. One, it's real life time, it's real time. Instead of getting things much later, kids need things right away in order to stay abreast of what they need to learn. I think that's a piece that's very, very important. But I also think that the world of technology is ever changing. And for some folks, it actually can be a little scary. And I think that schools are the place where we should be teaching children how to utilize the technology efficiently, safely. I mean, I look at some of the things that could happen if kids didn't know certain things about tools or about websites that we as educators need to be teaching them. So
teaching and modeling.
Modeling that for them. So having the tools now available, which we're still forging ahead to try to get them in every classroom, but in some central locations and in many of the classrooms, provides that opportunity to model and guide through this whole new world for our kids.
That's right.
So,
yeah, digital citizenship is another
Yeah.
phrase you hear a lot. And what does that mean? Well, it really, all of this, especially for our middle and high school students, getting our new website in place is helping to prepare them for what if they go to college, this is what they're going to be doing in college. Everything is done through a website. There are many online courses or hybrid courses that are face-to-face and online. So as a district, it's really important for us to help prepare them for that environment, and that's all part of this.
And you're talking about preparing them for their future.
Correct.
Which is a different world than when we grew up.
That's right.
And many of our people that are out in the town, certainly a different environment. And I always encourage folks to come in and take a look. I think they'd be pleasantly surprised to see some of the things that are going on in our schools, and I'm excited about the opportunities. So I'm going to shift gears now, Lynn, and I'd like to talk a little bit about some specifics about how many computers we actually have been able to bring in, and what did the computers look like before? I know we have an Apple IIe over
Yes.
here that.
Yes, this year, with this current capital plan, we are in the process of moving out, hopefully, the rest of those Windows 98 computers, and moving in 300, probably going to end up being about 350 brand-new desktops into classrooms. And as part of that, I did bring an example of a computer that was actually still in use, along with a dot matrix printer. It's an Apple IIe. And it was in one of our libraries. And it just is a little bit of an example of how we've really gotten a lot of use and made the best use out of a computer than I have ever seen. But it really, truly is time for us to kind of lift North Attleborough into a place where they're using current tools. And so that's why I brought that along. I really got a kick out of seeing that come out of the library and have an opportunity to make that librarian a little happier.
And does that have floppy disks?
Yes,
They don't make floppy disks anymore.
No, they don't. So it's kind of funny to look at that. I think I'm going to hang on to that, though. It's kind of a museum piece.
You never know. It could be actually worth something someday.
Maybe,
It's
maybe.
a little bit of antique.
We'll see. We'll hang on to it for the school.
So 350 new computers.
Yes.
That are more of a flat screen, more current.
Right, which helps with energy, getting rid of all of those huge CRTs.
yes.
Some of them that were donated were really big, and they use an awful lot of energy. So there's a little bit of a cost savings on the energy side by doing what we're doing and getting away from that and moving to flat panel monitors.
We also were able to upgrade some of the labs. Want
Yes.
to talk a little bit about that?
Right, we were able, in a couple of our buildings, which had the oldest computers in their labs, two of our elementary schools, the community school and Falls School, we were able to get some funding to buy refurbished computers. These are computers that are used but have been refurbished and come with a 3-year warranty, so that, again, will buy us a little bit of time, but it allowed us to update those two labs so that they are in a place now where they can do a particular program that we had purchased for those buildings for online testing for students. And so we were able to do that this year as well. We've been very busy.
Yes.
So we've done the 300 computers. We have 2 labs that were updated. And the teachers are really very excited about that. Some of the other things we've done with this capital plan is added 95 mounted projectors across 9 buildings. Now, with those mounted projectors, we build in a sound system so that as people are projecting and displaying video or information from the internet, the students can hear it appropriately and it works well for the entire classroom. We also added 12 more Eno boards to different locations across the district. And there are plans, when more funding comes in, to continue that process and try to get that in make sure every classroom has what it needs going forward. We already talked about wireless access, and that is definitely in the plan for future capital plan, is to complete wireless in all of our buildings, middle school and the rest of the elementary schools.
And we've talked a little bit about that, about a bring-your-own-device kind of opportunity, particularly we'd begin at the high school. I know that that's going to be a lot of work. We'd have some education that we'd have to do. We'd have to upgrade our policies, or we'd have to present and get permission and, approval at the school committee to move forward with this. But by putting in wireless, then we could also do this, which would bring a BYOD, which is bring your own device.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, because when the second part of our conversation, the second part of this technology show is going to talk with the students, and I'm going to ask them some questions, but give folks a little bit of background on what BYOD means, please.
There are a number of districts across our state, across the country, that are already doing this, and so I've been in conversations and seen many presentations and kind of watching them and learning from them so that we can be better prepared when we're ready to move out to that. So, the past couple of years we've been building that infrastructure with that in mind, and as part of that, we've already met and begun to draft an addendum to our acceptable use policy that really will discuss what everyone's responsibility is in an environment like that. We'll have to have conversations with our staff, our teachers.
Yep.
We would probably have to pilot that before we moved into a full-fledged rollout. It makes more sense to start with a smaller group, work with a small team of teachers, and help them kind of feel their way through what a classroom looks like when you're allowing students to use smartphones or tablets of some sort. And so we have some, as you said, some educating to do with both staff, students, and parents when the time comes.
Yep.
You also have to keep in mind that there are people that may not be able to purchase those kinds of devices.
I was going to ask that question next. Yep.
So we would absolutely make accommodations and have something like netbooks. We already have some in the media center at the library. Students would be able to check out a netbook like they would a book, and if they wanted to use it during a particular project during the school day. So they would be able to have technology available to check out from the media center. That's the model you would use, because you have to make sure that you level the playing field and everybody has what they need.
Boy, won't it be interesting to hear what the students say about this, and what their thoughts are on whether or not they'd be able to bring in their own personal device. I mean, you and I have spoken on many occasions about the fact that not everyone connects to the same type of equipment, and that some people like an iPad, or some people might have a netbook or a laptop or whatever that might be, and so that personal connection is important to your style.
Right.
And then, of course, it would also be another cost saver, in that you wouldn't be trying to buy an individual computer for every person. They'd be bringing in their own, but we'd have to have a lot of stipulations on the do's and don'ts
Going
of that.
to a one-to-one environment, which you hear a lot about that, you hear about it on the news or in the paper. Districts that have done that have invested an awful lot of money, and think about sustaining that.
Right.
And, then there are models where you come up with ways for parents can lease to own through a company if you arrange to do that through school. But you're right, it is a personal choice. I think that rather than deciding what device everybody should be using, I think the way to go personally is to allow people to bring the device that works for them. For some people, iPads or other types of tablets really don't work for them. They really want a netbook or a laptop. That's what they need. And so I think you need to leave it to the individual.
Well, and we'll see how that works out as we roll forward. Another cutting-edge thing that I know is going on across the district, and that folks at home will be hearing more about, is a parent portal.
Yes.
Which it really sort of goes along with our website, and that there'll be an opportunity for folks to sign in, and they can actually see, when I talk about real time, it's right up to the minute kinds of grades and attendance and things like that. Would you like to talk a little bit about it?
Right, we're working our way slowly towards that. The first step already began. We started at the middle school last week at parent-teacher conferences, giving out to parents their activation codes for Edline, the website, as well as activating and giving them access to the portal. The portal piece right now gives parents the ability to see their contact information, and they will at some point be able to make updates to that contact rather than having to fill out a form to send back and forth. So we're hoping to move towards that model to save time and paper. Also, they can see, right now, they can see student attendance. We hope to move forward at some point. We have training to do with teachers to help them understand how they can post grades or post progress reports and report cards, and we'll be able to produce electronic versions of the report card posted through the portal. So at some point, we might actually get to a place where if you choose to, as a family, you can simply view your report card online when they become available, rather than sending them home on paper.
Again, you're talking about a cost saver in the long run.
For the district,
going green.
and going
Yeah,
green.
yeah.
I'm all about saving paper. You know how I feel about printing. And so I'm really excited that someday we will be able to move towards that. We're getting everything in place for that.
That's another topic that'll be interesting to hear from the students' point of view on how they would like to be able to actually access what their grades are, instead of somewhat of a process that we have now, and that you have to wait quite a while to actually see.
Right. In districts that are already doing this, I think I've heard, in my previous district, we were doing this for a number of years. Teachers found it to be one of the best ways to communicate with their parents and their students.
Sure.
It saved a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
It saved a lot of students lining up at the desk at the end of a class to see what they're missing for homework. Students know they can get that through Edline, through the portal. And so it helped students get more organized. It helped parents stay in touch with what their students were doing. And it helped teachers communicate the needs and help keep their students moving forward.
That's great. That's great. I'm excited about that. You know, technology is one of those things that is always on the horizon. You know, I don't think we're ever going to catch up to it. We're just always going to be following it. But I think as we move forward, we need to be able to embrace opportunities for our kids and make sure that they're prepared to go off into the world that's ever changing. But at this point now, the divide is so large. I mean, to go from a classroom that doesn't use technology at all into an environment where there's going to be a lot of web-based interactive opportunities, we need to help prepare them to chart that course. And I think that's important. That's what our role is in a 21st century learning environment, which,
Yes.
by the way, that's sort of a buzzword out there,
Yes.
21st century learning. Want to talk a little bit about that before we start
Well,
to
we're
close?
almost 13 years into the 21st century, so we're scrambling to get to a point where we really feel like we're there. What 21st century learning, it means a lot of things, and a lot of different definitions are out there. It really means that we're, as I said early on in our conversation, we're breaking down the classroom walls and giving our students a chance to be global learners. And we have the ability to do that now with the internet and with the way we can connect with people everywhere. Having a projector in an interactive classroom opens up possibilities that weren't there when you and I were in school. Imagine being in a history class and you want to learn about the Revolutionary War, but you want to hear about somebody else's perspective of it. So maybe you connect with a class of students in London and ask them, what did they learn about the Revolutionary War? What's their perspective? Because you know it's going to be different from our perspective here. Those kinds of conversations will be able to happen. And that's what excites me, is putting those tools in the hands of students and teachers so that they can reach out beyond what they're used to and what we normally picture going on in a classroom.
That's great. That's great. So it's really expanding the horizons for all of us, I
Yes.
think. And, you know, the enthusiasm that I see as I travel around the district and I see, you know, with new pieces of material that they can use, it's very exciting. It's an exciting time. So our job is to try to sustain this, to keep that moving. The next part of our show will actually be to take all of this information and talk to students about their learning, about how some of these materials and some of the infrastructures have actually changed their learning environment and what they're thinking they might actually need for the future, because we call them differently wired these days. Kids come to us with a lot more exposure to technology than ever before.
Well, I want to share one thing
Yeah.
about that. Our students certainly do have no fear when it comes to using technology. However, they need our guidance.
Yes, they do.
And that's a piece that we have to work towards as educators, is to be able to work with them hand in hand and help guide them in their development and use of these tools. While they may be really quick to just figure out how it all works, they're not necessarily completely prepared for how to use these tools to help them and further them in their education.
So for the folks at home, you've heard a little bit of the background of the kinds of things that have been happening inside North Attleborough schools as far as technology goes. I hope you tune in again so you can see part 2 of this edition, and that we're going to be having a conversation with students about how does technology impact how they learn, how they think, and what they think they're going to need for the future. So thank you all very much for watching, and this concludes Inside North Attleborough Schools.